I didn't know what the Wonder Person was for.
Well, Wonder. So originally, when I did the programming for the year at Fitness Protection, it was middle of December, and I was really excited about June because I'm like, oh, you know what's happening in June? Wonder Woman 1984. And I'm a sucker for a good Cold War spy movie like Salt or Atomic Blonde. So Wonder Woman 1984, I'm like, of course, back when all we cared about was the Russians. I'll take it.
Everything has changed.
Yeah, a lot has changed since then. So I'm writing an inspirational my Thursday email about exactly that. Like we actually revealed that the Wonder Woman person is us. Yay, us. But it's been digging deep to find it because Lord knows I'm tired.
Well, it's just funny because I have been watching a lot of just yesterday to escape. So fictional stuff, sci-fi stuff, whatever. And as part of any hero's journey, there's going to be difficult times. But in a movie, it's like 5 minutes max. But right now, it's just like, oh man, the hits just keep on coming. And the thing is that nobody is one thing, and you can't say, well, I can only deal with this one part of myself right now. Mm-hmm. So it's everything at once. So I've got the regular stress that everybody has as a result of COVID. I've got the stress of being an essential worker. I've got the stress of being not far from Atlanta. So I didn't feel like I was going to be sucked into the rioting because I live down there, because I live outside, I live in the suburbs. But the tension ripples out, of course, and then it's so heavily covered in the news. Mm-hmm. And there's just a lot of tension. And a lot of the country does not live in integrated areas.
No.
So they don't know what the stress of living in an integrated area is like if you're right outside of where the rioting's happening, or if you're living like in the middle of the riot, because usually people who like city living, they're right there in the middle. There's no way to not be involved. And so it's a lot right now. And since I'm also in an interracial family, you would think, well, people assume that means that if you marry outside of your race, that you both have to be woke, like that's some sort of prerequisite, that you have to be empathetic about the unique experience of your partner. That's not a prerequisite. And so this is a time when there's another big opportunity for conflict and discord and just feeling like people who love you don't understand you and don't understand your experience. And it's a time of isolation on top of the COVID isolation. So just good times all the way around.
Yeah. It's like I wrote this post about white people wanting to show up, and it's like a couple days ago. And we're getting increasing numbers of people physically showing up and saying, want to volunteer, what do we do? And I'm like, seriously, go home and give us money. Which, as the white person there, I have to say that to other white people. They don't want to hear that from me. They came to help, and they want to hear it from they want Black people to tell them what to do. So it's even hard because policing white people, as you know, is hard to begin with. Like, try telling someone kindly that what they said, I understand your intention, but the execution, there's just no way to say it that won't be met with like, ugh. And to a degree, I get that. And I try to be respectful of it, which I try really hard not to do it. And I'm being told that I need to amplify your voice. So I'm going to step. Yes, Carmen, you are correct. Dalia does have the mic.
You better say Carmen. Carmen is the one who is so serious about.
Carmen, I have been washing mace out of my eyes for the past 3 days. I'm a little tired. Sorry. I apologize for that.
Well, and then also Carmen is literally the only person that I know named Carmen, but she does an excellent job of letting everybody know exactly how to say it. I like to give her a hard time about that. But
Right, yes.
and maybe this is this is a side note, but I recently, speaking of that fear of backlash whenever you correct someone, and then that added level of fear of somebody getting like being extra touchy about being corrected if they happen to be white. I only last week, was it last week, told you that my name is actually pronounced Dalia. So it's perfect that Carmine pops up because Carmine tells everybody the right way to say her name, but I will wait years or I'll never say anything at all. Like I don't know that all of my in-laws say my name correctly because I haven't corrected them because I've been trained that it's not worth the potential backlash. So it usually takes a lot.
It's not worth the potential backlash for people to say your name.
Yeah, to correct anyone, it's like, I don't know how much kids born in the 90s or the 2000s have had this experience, but my entire childhood, the messaging was, you want to be a good one. You can't be equal, but you want to be a good one. And a good one is one that doesn't make waves and one that doesn't correct people. And you just suck it up and you roll with the punches and you get in where you fit in.
Now, is that because of your blackness or your womanhood? Because I would say that's a very similar experience. What you just said, I'm like, yep, me too.
Right. Yeah, there's certainly a lot of overlap. So think about how mad men, and not everybody, and of course, but still, so often, if you tell a man anything, the price you will pay may not be worth it unless it's something very important to you that you feel like you must say. But so even correcting a man on like calling you sweetie when he feels like he means it in a nice way, is it worth the drama? Is it worth the fallout to you that you might face if you explain to him, I'm not your sweetie, especially if you don't have a problem with him? If he's someone you want to maintain a positive working relationship with, will you say, don't call me sweetie? It's so similar. And that's the whole thing about actively trying to dismantle all of the issues we have right now that are related to hierarchy and inequality. All of these issues are related. So to think that you can opt out, it's unacceptable. I know people will do it anyway. But today we are focused more on the people who we know want to help and just don't know what to do.
Where to start.
Right. And I would say because this isn't new and because it's not going to be resolved this week, next month, maybe next year, next 10 years, who knows? We need to think about things that we can do, not as though this is like an acute situation, but as though it's a marathon, really. So there's so much.
I'm sharing this to my Facebook page.
Trying to fight with your technology. So I looked up a couple of resources. My thing has always been when people are saying like the way you're protesting is wrong. Well, what is the right way and what tools have people been given to feel like there's something they can do? And policy change in our country and anything that has to do with money is typically the way we affect change. Sometimes it may happen through a lawsuit. You develop a precedent then that can protect people in the future. Sometimes it comes through people pushing and pushing and pushing until a bill is made and it goes through the lawmaking process. Like right now, it feels like there are finally some steps being made. Like the ask is becoming clearer. So I'll include in the comments one place you can go to sign a petition that clearly asks for change. Like what type of police reform do we want?
Yes.
What do we want to see? So a lot of times when people just get to the point where they're driven mad by grief, like mad as in insane by grief.
Yes.
People just start breaking stuff and acting out. Yep. But that's because other things didn't seem to be working for literally decades.
Yep.
And one frustrating thing is when someone of color says something and you don't believe them or you discredit them, you know,
Where you try to soften it. Oh, they didn't mean that. I mean, I know it hit you that way, but that's not what was happening.
Exactly. Is it them, or is it that you take everything that way because, you know, Black people are just so hypersensitive, you know?
Yeah.
And that's like a constant
And if we're
message.
trained to do this, why aren't the police? If we can de-escalate encounters, why can't our enforcement agencies? Sorry.
I think probably inadequate training, no training on bias, no training on learning to moderate your own emotions when you're going to deal with people who are having a hard time of moderating theirs.
Mm-hmm.
We have people who are survivors of trauma being sent out into, and I mean the police, being sent out to be in a place where they need to be prepared to take the higher road, and they don't have the tools that they need.
Exactly.
But I will say bias plays such a role, because when we saw weeks ago white protesters spitting in people's faces while they were armed, somehow they held it together. Isn't that interesting?
Mm-hmm. Somehow
people were able to understand that it isn't safe for me to lose control of my emotions in this situation. We have, as a nation, we have greenlit not controlling yourself when you're dealing with Black people who are perceived as getting out of place or acting inappropriately. You don't have to control yourself. You beat them down. And we can even see from the national response, that is still the message. They're out of place. Go beat them down. Go beat them down. Go beat them down. But I will say, because the human spirit is so resilient, that is not sustainable. That's not sustainable. And the more we act as though we can continue to operate as though everything is fine and talk about how this is the land of the free, while we know we have second-class citizens, while we know we have people who are not being given equal access even to public roads, it really troubles me that I pay my taxes and I can't go everywhere. I paid for all this stuff. I, pay for the police to be here. I pay my taxes, and I don't have equal access to these services that I paid for. And it happens all the time, even in private sectors, that I will pay for a service, but I won't get it, or I will not get the level of service that someone white who paid the same amount of money as me. And it's just ridiculous. And people are burned out. Absolutely. So I would say what people can focus on doing is really looking at yourself. And unless you live out in the middle of nowhere, the fact that most people don't have any Black friends, that right there, that's a sign that you have a problem. And you might want to look at that. Because even when you want to give people a room to like have a voice and whatever, if you got to really dig and search for somebody, that's a sign of a problem. And I will say, and Carmine knows this. So Carmine is, because you're here, Carmine, I'm just going to put all your business in the street. So Carmine is a biracial person, but a Latina, and people can never seem to really place ethnicity with her. So she has a very interesting experience in that people say crazy, shady, racist things to her face, assuming she might not be offended, that people would typically not say to my face. But in that unique position, she's been a witness to the disconnect between people not thinking they're racist, but at the same time, constantly doing racist things and performing microaggressions and being in total denial about it. So I've gotten to a point in my life, probably because I'm 38, that I have a lower tolerance for people who make me feel like they are a detriment to my mental health, because the stress that I'm experiencing from all of this, it's just multiplied when people who are meant to be in my corner are basically being unconsciously racist. So I remember confronting a friend, this is supposedly a childhood friend, who just had on an ongoing basis over the years just demonstrated that they believe that white is better. Subtly and in their opinion, unconsciously. Like they don't even realize they're saying these things or doing these things. So examples of that would be introducing me to other people to say like, oh, like listen to the way she talks and she's so not scary. And you would think that maybe she would be because she has tattoos. Mind you, have literally one tattoo and it's not a scary tattoo. It's a Paisley. I don't know when Paisley got to be scary, but anyway.
No, but it is there. It is big, and like that is bold. That is balls, Dalia. No, seriously, think about it. Like, what do white girls do? Like spring break tattoo. It's down here, the Playboy bunny. It's on their ankle. It's tiny and hidden. You just went like, you went full MK on that.
I at the same time it's so me. I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go get my first tattoo, y'all. And then I come back and they're like, that's your whole arm.
That's called a sleeve.
But at the same time too, like it's so funny. Like people just don't allow people to have depth and to have more than one thing going on. So I kind of wanted a smaller one, but I was also trying to camouflage a 3rd degree burn from when I was 4 years old. Right. That the scar is obviously not going away if I still had it at 30. And the tattoo artist said the best way to do that was to extend the tattoo beyond the scar. You can't just cover the scar, because he said that I would still be drawn right to it and it would be more visible than I wanted it to be. So he said, we need to do the whole arm. So I said, oh, okay. And that was that. That's all the thought I put into it. I didn't know it was going to make me scary. But just little stuff like that, like
it makes you brave. And that's what's scary. They don't even acknowledge the bravery. They just go straight to scary. Boy, MK, she's going to call me out. She's really volatile. You know, they don't talk about what it is that scares them. They just go right to, I am scared, therefore you. And that becomes the categorization. And I so sincerely apologize. For the record, I intended to be off camera already. I was just like, I am still crying mucus tears of pepper gas. And I'm just going to put so I'm not crying when you tell the story. It takes a while to get, if you ever been maced,
out of your system.
That hurts. So
I've only ever been accidentally maced by a sibling who didn't know what it was and thought the smartest thing to do was to spray it all over the room to see what it was.
Well, I tell women this. We always, every year, twice a year, we do a safety while running thing, and I talk about mace. And I'm like, have you ever tried to spray sunscreen on a moving child? Then, yeah, that's what it might be like if you're lucky trying to hit an attacker. Practice with that mace. You need to be able to get it open and use it with one hand, with the other one pinned behind your back. Like, you prepare to use it or leave it at home, because let me tell you, if you miss, you've just helped them subdue you. And I think that every single time. I've been maced multiple times every day for the past couple of days, because, why would I stay home? There's a party going on downtown. Let's go join the party.
Well, I like that certainly over the idea of just performing allyship. And I looked up for everybody a definition of what it really means to be an ally, because I think people are using that term a little loosey-goosey.
Well, you know why I don't call myself an ally, by the way?
Oh, see, I like that.
I never have.
I feel it's almost a term that people should be able to give you, not that you can give yourself. Like, I don't know if you hang out with a lot of, when I was trying to learn sign language, I was told you don't give yourself a sign name. A deaf person must give it to you. So it's kind of one of those things. It's like even saying like, oh, MK's invited to the cookout. You can't invite yourself to the cookout. No. You must be invited to the cookout.
Like when the first time someone called me an accomplice, I was like, everybody around was like, oh. And that was, if there is a thing to strive for, I learned that day, it's that. Like, and allyship has now become this cottage industry. And this is the point you made earlier that I was going to use to cue you up and then run off screen. But as usual, you start talking and I'm like, oh, yeah. So I'm sorry for that. But you made the point about the safety pin campaign, and what I thought was a good starting point was everything about that was problematic. Now, when that launched, it was after a Muslim woman, I believe, was attacked on a subway.
Yeah, that's what it was.
And it was in the UK. So the idea is if you wanted to be a safe space in the world for another Muslim person, then you would wear the safety pin and people would know that they were safe, which is kind, but kind of misguided because it's about you. And then when we talk about we need to center the conversation, the safety pin campaign centered the conversation on the pin wearer, not on the people who need the safe space. Like I had to go back and Google earlier, not just because I'm tired. Was that Muslim woman? That I think it was a Muslim woman.
Yeah, because
and that's what's problematic about it.
The person has a hijab on.
Yep.
Yeah, it's so interesting because there was an incident where a young white man, and I want to say this one happened in the U.S. because there was a lot of anti-Muslim stuff back to back, a lot of incidents back to back. And he got all this praise for standing up for two women who were being berated and verbally attacked by a stranger. And you heard it in his news coverage. He kept trying to redirect the attention back to the young women who survived the attack and who were able to be assertive, even though they were very young. And he kept trying to direct the attention where he thought it needed to go, but people would not take it off of him. Mm-hmm. So I thought that's interesting. Now, here is someone who's really, he's an accomplice. Like he's really trying to work with people. He actively did something. And then even in the aftermath where the white supremacy persisted, the white supremacy that wants to put the white person at the center of every story. I mean, white supremacy, it isn't just this hateful, scary thing that only Klansmen have in their hearts and their minds. When you look at media and every time you see a leading man, the leading man must be white. When we live in a world where no one can conceive of, let's say, even James Bond not being white, that tells you right there in our mind, the leading man is always white. Mm-hmm. If anyone would say Idris Elba can't be Bond, that's madness right there, right? But that was in the news a while back. There are all these little things that reveal that whiteness is seen as the default. Mm-hmm. It's this very colonialism continues to affect us. And to think that white supremacy only belongs to extreme terrorist groups like the Klan doesn't make logical sense. And that is something that was put into our minds in the 60s when people were resisting all of the changes that people like MLK were pushing for. We drew this false dichotomy that if you are racist, you look like this, you're horrible. And we are not that, the moderate.
Such a problem. That's why, and I got a lot of pushback for this on Sunday night. I know you didn't listen to Ask the Coach because why would you on a Sunday night?
But I was just vegging out still.
I feel you. I said, and I stand by it. I said what I said. I will not call Amy Cooper a racist. It's too easy. As a white person, I don't have the right. And I don't think other white people do either, because what we're doing is exactly what you said, jumping into the dichotomy, distancing ourselves from her instead of looking at the structure that gives me the same power that she has to do the same thing that she did and saying that system needs to change. We make it about her and about the perfect victim. What if he hadn't been Harvard educated working for Marvel Comics? What if he had, would we have heard about it at all? That's problematic too. We shouldn't need to know anything about the victim to care about the crime.
And what if he had been a teenager that didn't know how to navigate that situation?
Yeah.
It isn't fair and it isn't rational to expect teenagers, if you're a certain color, you need to grow up like that because people perceive you as being older than you actually are. And you don't have any time to be a child. Once you exit the house, you have to be like thinking like an adult, how to protect yourself and how to survive. And no one wants to talk about that. You have to be the perfect victim.
Yep.
There's so many levels, but I said we weren't going to,
because the thing that like kind of matters, the thread that I really want white people to focus on before you get into like, here's what you do. I think the most important work we can do is break out of that dichotomy. Stop calling people racist. Look at their actions. Say, could I do that? Not would I do that, because that's wrong. You like, she probably, if you had asked her at any point, I would never, up until the minute that it happened. So I think really personally, the place to start is create a hashtag, I am Amy Cooper, and start thinking about the ways that you're exactly like Amy Cooper and that you could do what she did. And then to look at your child and have an actual conversation about anger management. Because I think in that moment, we won't know what her mindset was when she walked into that park. We don't know that it was hatred of a Black man specifically. I mean, I worked in finance. She worked at Fidelity, which used to be a client of mine. So I can imagine having been like pushed around, passed over, working from home. I can imagine the mindset, because I've been there, that she might have gone to that park and in any other moment, she would have been like, oh, and now I can't do, like, I will not be policed just one more time. You know, we're not, because we want to see her as a powerful person because she's wealthy, but she still lacks maximum power in the structure.
Well, you can tell from her language, she's gotten used to performing what she feels is acceptable. These days, it is pretty out of fashion to be racist openly. Tons of people still are.
Yes.
Tons.
Yes.
But the language that she used, she didn't say, she didn't use a racial slur. She didn't even say a Black man, which Black to me is my preferred term, but whatever. She said African American. What she did was took advantage of systemic racism. And I think what a lot of people are missing, who are all along the spectrum of engaging in this system in different ways, is that people are not being sensitive. So you hear it all the time. Like, remember the big snowflake thing and, oh, being triggered is you're delicate, you're this, you're that. I couldn't get any more resilient. The problem is systemic racism. If the only problem was that some people are racist and some people don't like Black people, what do I care? That sounds like a personal problem. But if I can pay my taxes and be assaulted by one citizen who should have equal rights to me, but I have to jump through all kinds of hoops to get some kind of semblance of justice, to get some crumbs that I've already freaking paid for, that's a problem. Systemic racism is what people are enraged about and sick of.
Yes.
And looking at someone's work like Malcolm Gladwell, when he talks about how his mother experienced systemic racism, his parents basically having made arrangements to move into an apartment, and then once they're seen, their housing is pulled out from under them, that's more of a problem than somebody yelling racial slurs at me in the street.
Totally.
I am not a snowflake. I don't need anyone to give me special help or lift me up or, you know, support me in any special way. I need for people to get off of my neck and to stop doing things that hold me back. Systemic racism is
looking at the things that they do to hold you back. Exactly. Because most of us would never, I would never hold you back. What do I do to hold you back, Dalia? So just to be really, really clear to everyone listening, like, you didn't create the system. You don't have to apologize for it, but you benefit from it. You participate in it. So there are ways to acknowledge it and deconstruct it. And a really great way to do that is to donate to the community bond funds. If you've ever been processed by the criminal justice system, spoiler alert, this girl has. In that moment when you need cash and someone to answer the phone and show up and find a bondsman in the middle of the night, it's not as easy as it sounds, especially if you say don't have a cell phone or don't have internet access in your home. It can be, it's actually a really scary situation. So to that, these bond funds are revolving bond funds. So your money is used over and over and over. It is cycled and recycled. For a $5,000 bond, you pay $500 in cash. You show up to court, you get the cash back, and that $500 then goes back to help another person. It will be used over and over and over into perpetuity. That's what the bond fund is, but it is not a nonprofit. These have been established very quickly without the nonprofit designation. So don't go in there expecting to get even like credit for it. Just do it because it's the right thing to do. And that's that. So that's a really great place to start, is acknowledging that part of the open. When I call myself an abolitionist, what I'm saying is that I do not approve of cash bond because it goes to a certain type of person to keep them locked into a system from which there's little to no escape.
And just really look at ways you can push for policy changes.
Write your senators. Look up who your local representatives are. Who's your DA? Did you vote in that election? Did you get to know them? DAs have a whole lot of power, especially at the local level. Who's your county clerk? If you don't know, get involved. Like Cardi B, follow Cardi B on Twitter. She will tell you what to care about. I kind of am like, wouldn't mind her running for president right now, man. She knows what's going on.
She was born in the Dominican, wasn't she? Actually, I don't know if that's true, but I thought she was. I need to verify that.
She tweets. I had to get on, like, this is where we're at, Dalia, in our world right now. Dalia, I had to get on Twitter to follow Cardi B to get an idea of what's going on in the world, because I can't always find it. Like, I was looking for information on the protest during the day and couldn't do it. And there she is, like, retweeting other people. Anyway, and she talks about, it breaks it all down. This is what you do step by step. And I was just like, gosh, I wish everyone was that civic minded. Like, if you want to be woke, start there, white people. Yeah. Who are your local representatives?
Yeah, we really need to. And honestly, the push needs to happen across the board, because we just have some really lousy options. Yes. We need to dismantle the system of inequality. The asks are in the post. I'll put the asks in the post. I can't post from here, but I will go back and post. So that you know what to ask for.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, just so you know what to ask for. It'll give you some ideas, like what you want to ask for. Yeah,
absolutely. Because the thing that is not really being translated, I was having a very would have been loud if it had been voices back and forth with a childhood friend a few minutes ago on Facebook. And I'm not a member of either political party. I'm adamant about that. I'm an equal opportunity criticizer. There's one issue that I care about more than any other: civil liberties, police, police doing their jobs and having a check and balance when they don't. And the thing that I'm thinking the connection they're not making right now about what's different, and I don't know what you're seeing in Atlanta, what's different about this set of protests. In the 1990, there was I think it was 1990, it was a law that was enacted for excess military surplus coming into Operation Desert Storm, and they would hand it to cities. So, and it was dispersed all over the country. This still happens after Ferguson. A lot of times, like local, you if you want to know like what percentage of your budget is allocated towards purchasing excess military supplies, you can Freedom of Information Act it and go look it up. But chances are really, really good, I don't care where you live or how rural it is, y'all have like rocket launchers somewhere in the county that police have probably not been trained to use, but at some point it was there. They had the budget for it. They had to spend the money, use it or lose it. And so they got rocket launchers. And that's a very extreme example. But when you take a look at Ferguson, what happened in 2015, you had police who had not been trained specifically to use this equipment in this situation, using military grade equipment and doing real harm and real damage. And when Jeff Sessions made two statements, and I'm going to end with this, in February, when he came into office, he said, "I will no longer prosecute civil rights violations committed by police officers." So that, which is telling the states basically what to do. Like, we're not going to pursue this. Y'all don't need to bother. So that's kind of a problem. Meanwhile, the surplus, Trump removed by executive order the caps on purchasing federal surplus. So when you combine those two things together, at the time when you think, oh, race relations are getting worse, we need more armaments, and so there more police. This isn't training, so this is not good for police officers either. We're buying them all this equipment. We're not spending any money on training them how to use it. We're waiting until after the problem starts, handing them all this equipment and saying, go control the crowds. Dalia, that is going to be natural someday. But I was watching, they didn't know how to pull the pin out. They didn't know how to load the cannon. They were trying, I'm standing like 2 feet away from someone holding a pepper gun, and that's why they put it down and maced me instead, because they didn't know how to reload it. And that's when And by the way, all I was doing was standing in front over a medic, so they couldn't take away the medic supplies who was trying to get a rubber bullet out of someone's chest. Rubber bullets, by the way, can actually kill you. They're not safer. They're just less likely to kill you. But I digress. That's assuming. So what's going to happen now? I made a comment about, like, are people hiding in a bunker while all this is happening? Well, they're like this, because here's what's going to happen. If you're not on the ground seeing what's happening, you're going to say, well, looting and rioting, I'm not okay with it. Do whatever you have to do to stop it, which is going to lead to more weaponry, less training. And all of these weapons, by the way, are escalating the violence. It's not, and police are taught to de-escalate. So circling back to the beginning of this conversation, where we have been taught to de-escalate when someone's really angry. They didn't mean it. This didn't happen. Let's experience it differently. Let's put ourselves in their shoes. Blah, blah, blah. That's not happening with the enforcement agents, who are just kind of coming in and trying to end the conversation with the show of force that they haven't necessarily been trained to use, and aren't prepared for the next step when it escalates. The riots here have been doubling every single night, doubling. Easily. People see what happened the night before and they want to come out and get involved. I'm sad to say I did not know how many Black individuals we had in Denver. I'm learning every day that number is way bigger than what I thought. People are coming in, driving in from Nebraska and Wyoming to get involved in what's happening here.
Like all 5 of them.
That egregious. We probably had, I heard the conservative estimate last night was 18,000.
Wow. I understand people feeling like the violence. I understand people focusing on that and basically saying this. I don't even know. I'm at my wit's end. I saw a loved one post after staying totally silent about the actual issue, which is police brutality and murder of Black people being A-okay in this country by and large. They had nothing to say about that. But they reposted something that essentially said, you had the world's attention, you had our sympathy, and you ruined it. That says so much. Are you telling me that if I don't ask nicely to not be murdered when I'm jogging, if I don't ask nicely to not be murdered when I'm pulled over for a routine traffic stop, that I don't have a point? I have to say it a certain way? Please don't kill me. I'm a citizen. I should have equal rights like everybody else. Analyze what you're reposting and analyze your own thoughts.
Yeah.
Why should someone have to say nicely, I'm a human and I should have access to all that the American dream is meant to be? And if that means walking down the street in a neighborhood that is my own or isn't my own and not being shot, and, people basically saying, oh, that's fine, you can kill that type of citizen. They're like a quarter of a person anyway. Don't worry. Like, I'm confused as to how people that I thought had some critical thinking skills can't see the issue. And that is an excellent point. You don't tell people how to grieve. Amen. And you're invalidating people's experience when you say, I maybe would have listened to you, but you said it the wrong way. And everyone has had that happen to them, that you had something to say, you felt very strongly about it, and you waited too long to say something. And when it came out in a ferocious manner. That doesn't mean you don't have a point. And anyone who genuinely wants to understand you or communicate with you needs to make room for what you're trying to get across. The issue is people aren't interested in hearing the people that are out there. People are interested in silencing them and maintaining the status quo. And people are having a field day with quoting MLK. Let's remember that when MLK was protesting, people didn't like how he was doing it either. He's dead. He's dead. He was peaceful. It wasn't good enough. So to say that if you just protest in the right way, maybe we'll give you some scraps that look like justice or look like equality, time has already established that that is not true. People have tried to ask for this issue to be resolved in so many different ways, and it persists. People are at their wits' end. People are so upset and so heartbroken. That is what you're seeing. Hurt people acting out. And if you think the way you bring somebody down is to completely try and silence them, think about the last time you had an argument with your partner and they said, calm down. What was your reaction after you heard the words calm down? After you're trying to express yourself, you have a message, it needs to be heard, and you're told, you're saying it wrong, shut up, we're not having this discussion. Did you not lose your mind at that point? This is the point that people are at. And I think, too, for people who actually do know people of color that are just extremely stressed out right now, do not ask for them right now to be tutors. They don't have the energy. You can do this reading on your own. You can reach out to white anti-racists who's been doing this work for years because they are out there. Or you can reach out to somebody like Carmine, who has endless amounts of emotional energy. Carmine thinks she's going to just change the hearts of all the people. And I hope that it's true, but she knows I'm way more jaded than that. Just be careful about how much you pull on the energy reserves of people who are already at their wits' end. Mm-hmm. A couple of weeks ago, I was hanging by a thread just from coronavirus, and now it's like a really frayed thread. There's virtually nothing left. And I laugh because that's just me managing stress, not because I actually feel like everything's fine. So yeah, that's all I have to say. I have some links to share and I'll put them in the notes. And things are rough and they're about to get a whole lot rougher, but this isn't new and it's not going to be resolved in a day. So you have to conserve your energy and think about sustainable ways that you can commit to this long term, and think about the fact that we need to dismantle existing systems. It's not just enough to teach people to be nice. It's not just enough to teach people to try and reel in the way that the racism shows in different individual ways. Like, you have to work on purging systemic racism from our legal system and from other established systems. And then we can work on interpersonal change. I think the systemic racism is a far bigger issue right now. Okay.
Sorry, I was just like, yes. Yes.
I was just like, okay.
Oh my gosh, it's so funny. I needed to laugh. Thank you. Standing ovation. Shoot, yeah, that deserved like at least 9 seconds of silence. Yeah, so there's a lot going on right now, and there's a lot at play. And I think that's the complexity of it is tough to convey, and it doesn't fit in a tweet. No one's condoning the looting or the rioting. We're saying we know where it comes from. This is how we got here. Let's stop. Instead of putting the people in their place and saying, stop being angry, let's look at where the anger is coming from and do something about it. And this is my final note on it. This is why the bigger things going on in the country matter so much. It's not about one president. If you go back through my tweets through my Facebook page, you will see I had a lot to say about Obama and his approach to all of this too. A lot. I had even more to say. I mean, we didn't have Facebook during Clinton, but there is not a time that I have been silent since 9/11, when the first big revocation of our civil liberties occurred. And most people are like, what are you talking about right now? And like, that's exactly my point. Like, we cared so much about safety that we didn't care about the liberties that we handed over to the government in order to protect us. And at the time I was a Republican. So I was like, I don't trust the government to take care of me. What you kidding? Who you kidding? No. And that was what, funny enough, got me involved. So now to see a Republican administration taking away a check and balance from the police force like they did 2 years ago, less policing of the police, more weapons in their hands, less confidence of a group of people that justice will ever be served. What else could have happened? So that's the stew that we're in. And that's the why of the now, and that's why the faith is gone. And like, it's rather than making it about a political party, this could have happened under any in any administration.
Oh, absolutely.
It didn't start with Trump. Like, in the moments that I say his name, I do so carefully. Like, I was so mad when I heard he was in that bunker yesterday, Dalia. You have no idea. I was like, get out the bunker and come stand here. Come into the street.
Oh,
and see what's happening.
I am like seriously for my own sanity checking out. You know,
I need to see the policemen that don't know how to use this equipment and stop buying it for them and save my tax dollars.
It's just pitiful on so many levels. Like when we look farther back to the 60s, even like who was roughing up kids when, I mean, these are our boomers now, but when they were protesting the Vietnam conflict, who was having to do it? Other working class kids. Like so it isn't even that the police are to be demonized.
No.
It's like everyone's a victim of this awful system we have set up.
I'm not saying get rid of all the police. You know who was chanting F the police? Yes, white people.
I know, of course, because there's just, you know what? This
when
is
you
more
show up to a
sugar in
protest with an NWA shirt, you are probably not black.
Wait, was somebody wearing that?
Yes.
I don't. Maybe we'll just end on that note. This requires a series. This requires a series. There is just so many things that people need right now. Because, like, think about it. Some of us had mental health issues going into COVID, and we were already coming unraveled. And then we added this. So it's like we need safe spaces for people of color. Mm-hmm. And that's another thing I do want to mention. People who self-identify as not being racist. I've turned that into self-identify because they don't know yet or whatever. I halfway take that back. I will say people get very upset when you say like you need some time with other people of color and that's it.
Yeah.
But when you have felt your entire life like a certain group of people is never totally safe. You never know when the next attack is coming, whether that's some friend of yours calling you an Oreo, whether that's some friend of yours saying like, oh, you're not like the other black people. Like, I don't really like black people that much, but you're like, you know, you're different. You never know when the next gut punch is coming. So if I need a real break, I might seek out the company of other people that I think are having the same experience.
Yes.
And the people who always say, I don't even see color, they're the first ones to get so upset when you say, like, this space is dedicated to Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Mm-hmm. Check that and chill out and try not to let those words come out of your mouth again. That's my advice for the day.
Oh, don't get me started. Like when people are like, what are you telling you? Because I'm getting this a lot. It's no. And I mean, y'all can figure out what I'm doing at night. I'm not naming the name of the group that I'm with, or I've been with them for 15 years, or what, like I've been doing this work for a very long time. It has not always been on this issue. Like Black Lives Matter didn't even really start until 2015. But it has morphed. Where I started has morphed over time for sure. And people are saying to me, like, this is irresponsible. You got 4 kids. I'm like, I also got Black friends. And I love saying that to white people, like, because then they got nothing to say. I mean, and by the way, don't ever say that, but I got Dalia.
Yeah, by the way, don't ever say that. In that context, and that argument,
that's a reason to go.
This is my thing too. Like, if something's wrong, if you don't really think it's wrong through and through, you're not willing to put your life on the line for it. Mm-hmm. But when you really are just so offended and so disgusted for something, like if there's an opportunity, whenever I see that women are being trafficked, which is a major issue we have.
Yes.
And that also goes back to like the patriarchy and this systemic belief that women are not as good as men. Oof. That makes all that possible. Like, I feel I wouldn't hesitate if I saw a woman or a child in trouble. I wouldn't stop to think, well, what about me? And what about my safety? And what about my life? Because I am so offended by that type of wrong. Mm-hmm. I don't hesitate.
Oh, yeah.
And I think this is an opportunity for us to look at ourselves and say, what is really important to me?
Yeah.
Is it worth living if your life is not a reflection of your values?
Amen.
To me, it isn't. I want for my life and my actions to be a reflection of what I think is really important, because we're all going to die at some point, and I want for my life to mean what I think it should mean.
Yeah.
And I want my actions to be in alignment. And I really respect other people who are doing that work to clarify, this is who I am, this is what I stand for, and it isn't about risk to myself. This is who I am. I can't opt out. It is what it is.
Yeah. And be very careful too, anyone watching, when there's nothing uglier than the way white people police other white people, which is why I'm really cautious to not do it. Lately I've been doing more of it than even makes me comfortable, where I'm like, try this. And then I hide. I'm like, you could do this without calling out. I'd never call out specific shenanigans harshly, because I probably committed a lot of them when I was younger and unaware. So I don't want to beat someone up for being where they are. That's contrary to who I am. Now, I'm also not Black. So that is something that is that's work I feel compelled to do, that I would never tell another person, especially Dalia, that you need to be doing this by my side. That's stupid. But you don't need to be, you can call Amy Cooper a racist and walk away. I will sit and have the bigger conversation with all the white people.
I'll say that she doesn't know it, but yeah. I mean, she's not going to Klan rallies or anything. No. And she probably voted for Obama.
And
based on her respectful use of African American. I mean, that's the tell.
Told the United Negro College Fund that she would not donate to them because of their name.
Oh, okay.
I'm just kidding.
It seems so true. Like I want them to update the name. There's so many things that I want to happen, but nobody asked me. But I just want for people to know, even when somebody says you, or even if somebody says something about white people as a blanket, anyone who's not a dummy knows that no group of people is homogenous. Yeah. Everybody knows that not all white people are bad. No one's attacking you. It may sound like that. That's not the intention. But it's also kind of lame to ask someone who's really struggling with grief to jump through a lot of hoops and be worried about semantics when they're trying to express themselves. Yeah. So like somebody, oh my God, I don't even know who it was that we were on a call with someone who said people need to commit to not being butthurt when they get criticized.
That was Chris. They're awesome.
Yes, please look at that. And are your feelings so precious that they're more important than justice? I think if you say that out loud, you know that they shouldn't be. But are you acting as though your feelings, are like fine crystal and everybody just needs to handle them? Or better yet, that they're already kind of cracked eggs. Like we need to take our preciousness about feeling criticized down a notch. And I know that can be very difficult for women because we're already criticized so much. But the truth of the matter is, this isn't about you personally. This isn't about anyone personally. But the only people we really have power over is the self. So what can we look at and what can we change, and where do we have power? Where can we do something? And listening to stuff, just understand what you're hearing is not for you personally. And do not take it in as a personal criticism. And even if you've been guilty of some of these things in the past that now you see are super lame or racist, let it go. Just don't do it again. Just learn from it. Like, you can't condemn yourself for past mistakes. You got to move forward.
100%. And I also feel compelled to say, like, whatever work as a white person that changed you or made you feel that it's not going to be the same roadmap for everybody. I can tell everybody in the world, start with Surge, and ain't nobody going to look that up because they haven't heard of it. They're going to go right to Black Lives Matter, which is a Black space. And I'm like, nope, Surge is the white sister organization of Black Lives Matter. They serve Black Lives Matter. Start there. Don't go to Black Lives Matter. They don't want to talk to you. They do not exist for you. They're not a rubber stamp organization handing out gold stars. Like, that's Surge. And they educate. But again, it's like, think about, like, do you want to be right, or do you want to do the thing? Do you want to learn, or do you want to learn from this person? You know, do you need Stephen Hawking teaching you introductory physics? Like, that was like something I heard on a college tour once. You really need your baby talking to this person. I was like, I burst out laughing. I never forgot that. And now I'm like, you know what? I don't need to see the manager. You are correct. So
I just think of how many times people have been asked to explain it.
Yeah.
People are exhausted with that. And that is something that's something I personally leave to people who say they have the emotional energy for it. And unless it's somebody real, real young, that person is not going to be a Black identified person.
Yeah.
Or Black presenting. They may be Black identified, but because they don't have to do it all the time, because people don't glance at them and think they're Black, maybe they have the energy. But don't ask me anything.
You can ask me everything, but don't try to teach me anything if you're white. And that's the other thing. There's a performative aspect to whiteness. As soon as it's like finishing AA, you finish 12 steps. Step 13 is tell everybody that you finished AA, and they got to come there with you, right? And that's like that, and that's not true. Not all alcoholics, but there is something to that where once a white person has discovered this knowledge, we feel the need to push it on others before it. We would rather do that to put distance between our new self and our old self than take another step forward into the learning process. So I would say, like, here's a great example. Roxanne Gay, love her work, but I can't. She's also an assault victim. And I say that to soften the blow. She was raped. She's a rape victim too. And her story is horrifying. And
I can't make space for her. I can't.
I understand.
It doesn't resonate with me.
I feel you. Her work, I tried to read Difficult Women, and I got 3 pages into it, and I found myself so almost re-traumatized, definitely triggered, that I couldn't finish the book. And I sat at this book club. This is when I left a certain organization I was volunteering with at the time, and I said I couldn't finish it. And I thought this would be a safe space to have that conversation about, like, in 3 pages, this evoked feelings in me so strong and so similar. It reminded me why I'm here and what we do have in common. And all these white people just got really mad at me. Well, that just shows the kind of a person you got more work to do. You need to finish the book. It's a very important book. And I'm just like, did you hear it? Okay, you're right. I can't read this book. I can't be here. So whatever work it is you think a person needs to do to completion might not be their work. There's a lot of different avenues you can take to not being a piece of trash. And it doesn't have to be exactly your path.
Yeah. I like Constance killing it with a good comment. She's got another one here. It's interesting too. Like, if you ask for the teacher to show up, I believe they will appear, the right teacher for you. And it's going to be different for everybody. And I don't even think we're all here to do the same work. So like maybe for MK, you're meant to actively fight racism. Like, this is your passion. I don't think people are trash who are like actively fighting animal abuse.
100%.
So if it's not your calling, it's not your calling. I'm not saying you got to drop everything and this suddenly becomes your mission. But I will say, everyone, if you're being a responsible citizen and you are in love with what America says she is, what America has promised us she will be for us, then you should be actively anti-racist. That doesn't necessarily mean you march. It doesn't necessarily mean you do anything that anyone else will ever know about, but it will affect the way you behave and the way you interact with other people, to be actively anti-racist. Just saying I'm not a racist in 2020, it's not enough, because people have been saying that for years and years and years, and we have yet to do anything about white supremacy, like, infecting us as a nation. And I don't mean it's just infected white people. It has infected people of color. Colorism exists because of white supremacy. There's just so many levels to it. If I am not immune to white supremacy, why would you be?
No.
If it got me, how in the world would it not get you?
Right.
You have to look at yourself and you have to purge it from your system.
I like your point about do the work that works for you. Because, I mean, let's think about what I do. I sneak out at night. After I put the kids to bed, I put on a bulletproof vest and I run and other things in a backpack, and I run to where I physically need to be because you usually can't get a lift there. And I like stand in front of people doing work, and I'm like, come at me. Come at me. That's not everybody's work, but that's, if you think about it, that's
it seems like a fit when you describe it.
And but that's not for everybody. That is how I fight. That's the battle that I chose, and that's my path. I don't donate that much because my ideas of what is right changes. I want to be there in that moment because honestly, 90% of protesting, actually 98% of it, is sitting around. It's kind of boring. I played a whole lot of Pokemon Go the other night.
Bonus. Little known fact.
I know.
Well, that might get more people interested.
Just saying, like, everybody come play Pokemon Go. We got some really great things downtown right now. Oh my gosh. Like where we sit is like this perfect little, anyway, it is not what you think it's going to be specifically. It's not hellfire, damnation, and total destruction. There are some agitators for sure, but it's not like, even if you walked in without a mask, people are like, oh, wait, here. Oh, you need goggles. Oh, it's all of a sudden people are like, oh, you don't belong here. Go home or take these. And
when I saw people protesting in flip-flops, I was like, oh, somebody didn't think this through, or they thought it was going to be a completely different scene from what it turned into. When I saw those flip-flops, I was very concerned for that child. I'm like,
we treated burns from flashbangs on feet. Yeah.
They didn't know.
No, you didn't know. And you don't want to believe it. Like, why would you walk into that? It's like, this is the work. This is my work. This is not everybody's work. There are all kinds of lanes. You don't have to find one and stay in it, but one isn't better than the other. And it's not a lot more exciting. Like it's a weird position for me to be in because I've done this work for so long. A lot of people who know me well probably don't know that I do it, but aren't surprised. The rule number one has always been do not talk about it ever. And for the first time, I mean, even 2015, I didn't have the capability to live stream. But the minute, and I remember having the conversation with you and with all the staff before I left, calling everybody one by one and saying, FYI, I fully expect to be arrested tonight or worse. And here's the contingency plan if that happens. I've never had to do that before. I've never had other things in my life that mattered so much. But it was interesting to be like, and I'm still doing this. And to go there and thinking, well, I'm not, I hate when I see people take selfies and post them. We're at the protest. Like, oh my gosh. But some of these are so haphazardly organized that I felt the need to check in so others would know where to come because it was thrown together at the last minute. Because I don't go up through Facebook events like the way I'm not allowed to describe my calling, but the way I show up is very different. Let's put it that way. I literally get a call from a different place. So when I showed up early a couple nights ago on Thursday night, and all we did was walk past the detention center, walking, nothing. We got tear gassed. And then the mace came out and I started live streaming like, oh my gosh, there are children here. That's not okay. There's a fence separating us. All you needed to do is back up. And that's when later the justification, this is where all the words I said earlier comes into play. Well, someone threw a water bottle and that could have been a Molotov cocktail. And I'm like, oh, somebody had a weekend training on flash cannons. There have never been Molotov cocktails used at these types of events, at protests, not in 2015. Google Molotov cocktail. There is no rational reason to think that those would be used here. But they were ready for that, which is why we don't need to militarize the police. Poor police. I mean, gosh, they got enough to worry about. And again, I say this just like this. It's not like I hate police. I hate the position they're put in.
Well, and then this is only going to get worse depending on how long this persists. You will not be able to convince any decent human being to become a police officer.
Right.
And then who in the world will we be getting? So it's different if you're already in that position and this wasn't your reality before. Yep. But a year from now, who in their right mind would be interested in this position? For what they're asked to do, they're pretty underpaid.
Teachers too. Everything that I think is the backbone of our economy, and I believe in that. Like what separates us from third world countries, if we're going to use that phrase, right? It's a functioning society with free public education, a civilized, the modicum of society. Theoretically, the police are supposed to keep the order. When I turn on the water comes out the spigot. When I hit the switch, we have electricity, basic utilities, and we are just eroding them, and I hate it. I really hate it. So I'm going to be out there. I very much see what I do as fighting for democracy, and whether you're showing up and standing in front of a person or donating to a fund so that other people can show up and do the work, it's all the same work. Just find your work. There are lots of ways to get involved. You don't have to pick the one that is the est in any way to have value. We oversell the value of leadership and undersell the value of following a movement. It's not about the person changing the movement. It's about the participants coming to make sure the movement doesn't stop. Mm-hmm. So I don't show up to lead. I show up to do other things. So I say, all of that, again, not to center it around me, but this is the first time ever I've been in a position where I would have publicized what I was doing for the safety of the people around me. Because normally, and when I do, if you guys see my lives, they're not very interesting. It's blurry. I move a lot. For people's safety, I'm not putting their faces on camera unless I feel like their life is endangered, in which I would use a different lens. It would be different. But I wouldn't, there are a lot of different ways to go about it now that we didn't even have for Ferguson. We didn't have it 2015, but we didn't have it.
Well, I'm too fragile for all of this stuff. So
I'm sorry.
I'll continue to stay behind the, I don't know. There's so many problems that we have in the world. There's so many different things we can be doing to,
we do.
There's so many different things we can be doing to support others. I'm trying to use this as a reminder for myself, because this fighting racism is not my passion. Because I deal with it every day, it's not my jam.
And that circles back around to like why I didn't even know a National Blackout Day was happening, but I'm like, if I do, seems really, I don't really think anybody wants to talk right now publicly, but I bet Dalia would talk to me.
That's true. It's so much easier for me to converse with somebody than to just like say what's on my mind. Like I've just been having a really hard time. It's been very stressful. Yeah. And I've just really been focusing on trying to maintain some level of inner peace so my head doesn't explode. Yeah. And stress is so closely linked to a myriad of health problems that you always hear in the media associated with Black people. But people always say, like, what are these people doing to make themselves so ill? Oh, it's the fast food. Oh, it's this, it's that, it's whatever. It's chronic stress. And it's usually chronic low-grade stress. But like right now, so I have Graves' disease, which I'm sure I've mentioned before. Mm-hmm. What takes you out of remission 9 times out of 10 is periods of stress. It could be physical stress or it could be emotional. So like, a lot of pregnant women, you'll have an issue with your thyroid during pregnancy, right after pregnancy, because of all the physical stress you're under as you're growing another human being. So my thyroid issue was in remission, but since all this, like my hair's falling out again, my triglycerides are through the roof, and it's all stress. So I feel like just my existing is an act of defiance. That's what I've decided to tell myself, because I'm not going to go march anywhere. And just
why would you right now?
Just being visible and just continuing to live my life. I feel like that is enough. I'm a little more passionate about LGBTQ things for people of color, because finding a safe spot to exist in life is so important for health. And I feel like if I have trouble finding safe places and I'm straight passing, I think of how difficult it is for queer Black people, and that's usually more my jam. And I was starting a podcast in November focused on like creating a safe place for people of color and queer folks and anyone who feels like it's hard for them to find a safe place. And I was thinking November, you know how I love schedules. But so right now, it just feels like the need for peaceful places and safe places is so high. And to have a little joy break in your day, that I'm going to launch a lot sooner. I'm thinking like end of the month. Just because there needs to be some way for us to maintain some level of inner peace, some level of joy, and continue doing all the necessary work. But I don't think psychologically we can stay in that space all the time and not break down.
No.
So if you have children in your life, they can help bring you out of that fight mode. If you have pets, God, give me my kittens soon, in your life, they can help bring your stress levels down. You just have to find room for the joy. And I think for women, especially who have trouble with difficult conversations, honestly, everybody does, but sometimes we do more than others because we've been taught you should be nice at all costs. Understand that you can have a conflict with a person in your life and be okay.
Yeah. And don't take all of it on yourself too. We haven't taught them how to respond to us. No one has taught them how, right? We hold back because what's it worth? We know what's going to come. We got to educate the next generation how to talk to women, how to be uncomfortable, and how to hear no and not get angry and physical. Because frankly, like, this is why I keep thinking about, we are all Amy Cooper. We really are. She heard something she didn't like in a bad moment. Anger escalated. She went for the nuclear button. I've been in simple interactions with men where I've done that and they've gone for the nuclear button too. And we need to, everybody needs to acknowledge their nuclear button, work on some anger management, sitting with totally happy, positive rainbow emotions. That's and learn true. To function better in this world, because we don't. The reason, by holding us back, men don't have to learn things. And by making it about your response, white people don't have to learn things either. And I posted an Audre Lorde quote to that effect on my page. Feels like this is a good place to stop, because clearly I'm waking up. My eyes are itching a whole lot less now. It might be time to go downtown. Oh my gosh. Wow. But I'm going to link to that, to your point, the Audre Lorde Project. Audre Lorde was a Black queer writer. You probably, I'm really, really glad that, if white people are going to co-op something, I would much rather it be MLK than her, which makes me really, like, when I start seeing Etsy shops with her quotes on bags, I'm not ready for that day, but I'm sure it's coming. It's coming. So look, the Audre Lorde Project supports LGBTQIAP in the Black community, I think it is specifically the Black community. I'm probably wrong there, but I'm also exhausted and my nose burns. And the other is there's a fund, again, not a nonprofit, but a fund to help homeless transgender individuals in Atlanta. And I'm going to be posting the link here after I end the broadcast. So there you go.
Those are our most vulnerable.
Because I knew you didn't care about abolition, so I thought, well, I'll get you some gay things. Yay, you're welcome. Happy Pride, Dalia.
Oh, that's right. Oh, Lord. I didn't even remember.
I forgot myself until the podcast editor was like, are we still releasing this podcast? And I'm like,
right.
I owe Christine.
But there's room for all of it. Like, I feel like focusing on one doesn't take away from the other. And it's a very all different tone.
I was going to be like, rainbows in the sky. And
I think we need that right now. Last night, my friends and I, we've been like, some of us have been freaking out more than others. I'm probably the most unstable, but the others they're just in a funk. And we decided what we really needed to have our spirits lifted was to watch Pose in a Netflix party. And that show gives me life. You see, it's just the
representation matters. Yeah.
Yeah. Representation matters. And you can be drugged through the mud. You can go through so much. And joy is still for you. It is for everybody. And happiness is for everybody. Yes. And you don't have to stop being happy to participate in a fight for what is right. You can do both at the same time. And you have to. You have to.
Yeah. I know when I watch, I've said this before, I'll say it again. One of my favorite movies is Drop Dead Gorgeous, because as a person who has
that movie, you never said that before.
Oh my God, I haven't to you? It's one of my favorites. It's like, speaking without my accent is very much a conscious effort to this day. But I'm well aware what people think when they hear it, and then I have to go prove it. I'm not that kind of white person, which I just do not have the patience for. If you have to ask, you're that kind of white person, stop. But one of the very few movies about a place like where I'm from, even though it's set in Minnesota, it could be Carthage, Tennessee. It really could. It's the first thing I ever watched that I related to, where I didn't feel like me and my community were the butt of the joke. And that's kind of what poses to you. And that's, so when I think of representation mattering, that's how I connect to it. Because normally I hear Southern accent on the screen and people are like, oh, and I'm like, that is one scene,
yeah.
man. And they had it coming. I've watched that movie. I'd have done the same thing. What? Anyway, I'm going to stop there. Just saying, like, we had those pricks in my backyard. Guess what? I have the kind of treatment they'd be getting. But anyway,
we'll stop alienating people.
Right. Just saying, like, representation matters. Find the thing that makes you happy and go do that thing. There's never a bad time for Drop Dead Gorgeous. And I relate to that the same way that you do. Pose on FX. There's a lot of good stuff to consume right now. Consume it at home and be safe. You don't need to go anywhere. There's still coronavirus happening. And the types of masks that we're seeing out town ain't the kind you want to put on. They're a little scary to look at. And your glasses, your swim mask gonna fog up real quick anyway.
Yeah, and I'm just really, really, really concerned that we can't have too many allies dropping dead from coronavirus. So stay home. If you haven't done it before, if you don't know how to do it, if this would be your first time showing up at rally, this is probably not the time to do it. You will have opportunities in the future, and it won't be coronavirus time. So
there's one on Saturday in Denver. We're going to be laying flowers, one for each victim of police brutality. So we're asking everyone to bring flowers. There's a time and a place during the day. Children are invited, but that will end, and then a second thing starts. So this is the other thing I really cringe at, like, well, the trouble happens when the sun goes down. I'm like, no, that's when the political protest begins. The rest is performative. This is the protest. That's when. So you don't want to be there for that. Go to the performance and talk to your kids about the importance of it. It's a great way. You'll see enough to have a lot of conversations that you're going to have to stay on Google for the next week and a half, since y'all worried about distance learning. They can learn all summer long. Learn about this, but you will learn it during the day. It's not only bad things that are happening at night, but that's when, frankly, the supremacists show up. And I've heard they're far right, they're far left. I'm like, no, they're neither. They're opportunistic SOBs that are not affiliated with the political party, and that's
terrorists. So, they're terrorists, but they're treated differently in this country because even white supremacy helps you out, even if you're a domestic terrorist.
Which is why they were ignoring the people burning things behind me, who all happen to be white, and trying to mace my medic.
There you go. So
that's not okay. It will never be okay. Like, that dynamic right there is what's happening everywhere. Yeah. And if that doesn't concern you, it's just because it's not you yet.
Yeah. But and with let's do some message of hope. I don't know.
This month, this is what I was working on right before we got started, before my eyes started burning and I had to go wash them again. This month, what I've been looking forward to all year long was arguably one of the most fantastic movies that was set to come out this year, Wonder Woman 1984. Yay. And despite its release being moved to August, what it has revealed is that Wonder Woman has been here all along. In you, in me, in all of us. And it's not just a woman, it is a wonder person. Inside each and every one of us, there's a superhero. And that is what is getting us through this terrible period. That's what's getting us out of bed each day, doing mundane things, doing extraordinary things, because even in this time, in an extraordinarily difficult time, simple acts are extraordinary in and of themselves. Creating and maintaining any semblance of normalcy. Don't underestimate that work. Celebrate what you've done at the end of each day, just like we tell you here to do. Don't worry about how much further there is to go yet. You'll know when you're close. Between now and then, what matters is that you are coached and you are loved and you are winning at life. Take a minute or two to support others who are pretty sure they are not.
That's perfect.
Ending there then.